Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your opportunity to sing the quadratic formula. I know that some of you really enjoyed that. I'm sure it was uncomfortable for others. I have really enjoyed watching you all. It's good to see your faces. Some of you are um, really entertaining, but I'm proud of all of you for getting on there and doing it. So make sure you do that. A couple things, and then we're going to dive in. I'm going to try to keep this video short. I say that every single video lesson, but I'm really going to try. All right, you've got 2 retakes that are due this upcoming Friday. So if you are missing these 2 things in the grade book, please do one or both of these. You're also welcome to do these if you don't like the grade you got on the initial assignment. Okay, for the quadratic formula grade, no one will be able to do a retake. It's just the video. So if you don't do the video by a week from this Friday, then you'll just lose out on those 16 points. So, okay, so these 2 things are due Friday. Okay, let's jump over. I hope you all are having a great week. There's been some beautiful weather, some fantastic thunderstorms in the last night. Last night was cool. The hailstorm, really enjoyed that here. All right, I'm going to jump over here, review something real fast. Excuse me. And then we're going to jump into the lesson. All right, so Unit 7 has been all about solving quadratic equations, okay? We started with solving by graphing. Okay, that was 7.1. 7.2 was factoring. 7.3 was taking the square root. 7.4 was completing the square. Okay, so we've been working on solving quadratic equations. Okay, and what we're doing is giving you a whole lot of different options. Okay, graphing is much more challenging in my mind. I'm not the biggest fan of graphing just because it takes the most time. Okay, factoring, we did a little of that back in Unit 6. Taking the square root, that's kind of new, especially that there's a positive and a negative value. And then completing the square is probably the most challenging. And then now we're working on the quadratic formula. Okay, so the quadratic formula, remember all of the things that we are doing have to do with the standard form of a quadratic function. Okay, so ax squared plus bx plus c. And the quadratic formula that you learned about in the song is the value of x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of this big b squared minus 4ac binomial, and all over 2a, right? All divided by 2a. Okay, so a couple of you did not have these pieces correct, so make sure that you understand the entire formula. Okay, I'm going to jump over here just for a second and show you something I'm going to post. Miss Hamer, which is she's a teacher in 2 of my classes, she posted this, which is really helpful because it's color coded. Okay, so you can see the connection between the quadratic formula and the standard form for a quadratic function. Okay, so your a and b and c, these are numbers. This entire thing ends up being a number or 2, right? Because x is equal to this, right? A positive version of this and a negative version of this. Okay. So you can use that, look at that as much as you want, but this is our quadratic formula. All right, underneath here, okay, the b squared minus 4ac, we call this the discriminant. Okay, and this tells us a lot about the solutions, okay, the solutions of a quadratic function. Okay, now just a reminder, solutions are places that our quadratic function crosses the x-axis, right? So these are solutions. They're also known as roots. Okay, in some places they're called zeros because the value of y is 0. Okay, so just a quick review. This is the quadratic formula, right? This is the standard form of a quadratic function. And these roots, the thing that we've been solving for this entire unit 7, are where this quadratic parabolic graph crosses the x-axis. Okay, and I should label this for you, x and y. All right, so we're going to jump to the lesson. This is part 1. Officially, the song is just going to be the quadratic formula song in the grade book. So quadratic formula right here. This is helpful if you can memorize it and manipulate these values correctly. All right, so we're going to focus on the discriminant today. Discriminant for part 1. So I'm going to come over here and put the lesson document up. Okay, so here we have a quadratic function. Okay, I'm going to use this part of the quadratic formula, which is b squared minus 4 times ac. Okay, I might write this down on my paper because that might be helpful, just so you can see this. I think I'm good over here. Okay, so I'm going to write down b squared minus 4ac, and I'm literally going to take them from this function. So b is negative 2. Now, some of you are making mistakes here because you do 2 squared and then make it negative. Any negative or positive number multiplied by itself is going to be positive. So that's going to be squared 4. The value of a is 6. The value of c is negative 3. So when we do that math, we get positive 4, and then 4 times 6 times negative 3, negative 4 times 6 times negative 3 is positive 72. And then I take the sum of those two, that gives me 76. All right, now here is where the discriminant gives us very important information. All right, notice this graph over here. We can tell by looking at the graph that we have 2 solutions. 1, 2, right? 2 places that we cross the x-axis. That's easy to see when you're looking at a graph. It's not always easy to tell how many solutions you have when looking at the quadratic function that you have, okay? So rule number 1. Rule number 1. If the value of the discriminant is, and I'm going to say greater than 0, there will be 2 real solutions. Okay, so here's the test. If b squared minus 4ac is greater than 0, then you'll have 2 real solutions. Okay, so I'm going to move this for a little bit more space. All right, so let's keep going. So that's rule number 1. Okay, this is rule number 1. There are 3 rules with respect to the discriminant. Rule number 1 is if the discriminant is greater than 0, you have 2 real solutions. And you notice that here. Okay, so you've got a solution here and you've got a solution here. All right, let's do the next one. All right, so we've got b squared minus 4ac. This is the part underneath the radical in the quadratic formula. I'm going to plug these values in. B is negative 8, so negative 8 squared minus 4 times a. A is negative 2. And c is negative 8. So negative 8 times negative 8 is positive 64. And then negative 4 times negative 2 is positive 8. And positive 8 times negative 8 is negative 64. 64, take away all 64, leaves us with 0. Okay. Now notice, if you look at the picture here, how many roots do we have? We just have this one, right? 1 root. So if b squared minus 4ac is equal to 0, if the value of the discriminant is equal to 0, there will be 1 real solution. Okay, so when you do this b squared minus 4ac, if it equals 0, you know that this parabola is only going to touch the x-axis at 1 point, right? There's only 1 real solution. So this is rule number 2. All right, let's move to the last rule. So remember, 3 rules. You can watch this video as many times as you need and pause it as necessary. I would recommend writing down these notes on this paper, right? Because I provide this to you. All right, so let's do this last one. Another quadratic function. Okay, we're looking for how many roots it has. As you can tell over here, we've got a graphical version, and we can tell, look how many times it crosses. None. All right, so we're looking for no real solutions. Okay, no real solutions. So let's look at that mathematically. So we've got b squared minus 4ac. That's the discriminant, right? A new term for you. We're going to plug these values in. B is -1, so -1 squared minus 4a is -2, and c is -1. So do the math here. -1 times -1 is +1. I put a minus there because of the 4, but it may be plus. We'll find out in a second. Okay, -4 times -2 is +8, and +8 times -1 is -8. Okay, and then 1 take away 8 is -7. So the rule is if b squared minus 4ac is less than 0, okay, how many times does it cross? None. So there'll be no real solutions. And we know this from when we were taking the square root earlier in Unit 7. When we took the square root of a negative, then we determined that in Algebra 1, we have no real solutions. So if the value of the discriminant is less than 0, there will be no real solutions, okay? Because remember, we've got -b plus or minus the square root now. This is that piece underneath, right? So we don't take the square root of a negative value. That means no real solutions in Algebra 1. All right, this is rule number 3. If you're into highlighting, I highly recommend highlighting these. All right, so just a brief recap, and then I'll share with you the assignment. You've got this thing right here. It's called a discriminant. Right? If its value is greater than 0, you're always going to have 2 real solutions. If its value is equal to 0, you have 1 real solution. And if its value is less than 0, you will have no real solutions, which means the quadratic function on a graph will not cross through the x-axis at all. Okay? So no times, 1 time, 2 times. Okay? All right. That's all for the lesson. Let me jump back over here. Again, I'll post this so that you have access to it if you're having a hard time identifying where this big thing comes from. Okay, and there's a way to prove this formula using this standard form of a quadratic function. We'll talk about that later. All right, I'm going to jump over to the assignment. All right, the assignment has 6 problems. I recommend you do all 6, but I'm only going to grade 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right, because this assignment will be out of 8 points. Each of these first 4 will be worth 2. So take this quadratic function, write down b squared minus 4ac, plug in the values, find out what the value of the discriminant is, and then say, based on this value of the discriminant, tell me, does it have 2 solutions, 1 solution, or 0 solutions? That's the only set of options you have, all right? 3 different options here. It's going to be 0, 1, or 2. That's it. All right, 1 through 4. Just so you know, my son's birthday that is coming up on this Thursday. His name is Oliver, and this is going to be the attendance ticket. All right, have a great Wednesday, Thursday. Always find something to be thankful for. It was great seeing your faces on the Flipgrid. I may be doing that more often because I really, really enjoyed it. All right, have a great day, everyone. Take care.